Heavenly Father, Great Spirit, behold us who stand before you, singing our song of thanksgiving for Nicholas Blackout. Faithfully he walked the sacred red road and generously witnessed the good news of our Lord Jesus Christ among the Native American people. We humbly ask you to hear the prayers we plead through his intercession. We ask Holy Mother Church to recognize his sanctity by acknowledging his presence among the company of saints and as one to imitate in his zeal for the gospel. Open our hearts also to recognize the risen Christ in other cultures and peoples. To your glory and honor, through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Germaine. So welcome to everyone. It's a great privilege to introduce Germaine Littlebear, who is the Director of Native Ministry in the Diocese of Cedar Rapids. So we're very happy to have her with us. The Diocese of Rapid City.
Thank you.
And in the Diocese of Rapid City, as you just heard, one of their great hopes that they are praying for is the canonization of Black Elk, who is buried in that diocese. That diocese was his home. So I'm sure Jermaine will tell us more about Black Elk. But I've invited her really to begin with the story about her own journey. And then she's going to tell us about her ministry to the Native people in the Diocese of Rapid City. And what it means to be Catholic and Native in that diocese. So Germaine, please take it away. And again, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, I recently became an employee of the diocese and became the director of Native Ministry just in February of this year. So I wasn't actually involved in a lot of the planning stages in the committee and everything that worked to help Nicholas Blackout be canonized. However, as a result of all the different work that the diocese has done, and everything is in Rome now. There's no more that needs to be done in our diocese. Everything, all the information, all the information gathering that was necessary to denote him as a servant of God. He's now known as a servant of God, Nicholas Blackout. And we pray on an ongoing basis in our parish and all over the state and throughout the United States. People are praying for his canonization. And we are so grateful to have somebody from our own area in Native American to be considered for canonization. He does need to have, we're working praying for miracles, because he needs to have miracles before he gets moved to a venerable or blessed and everything. So but it's in the process. Yeah, all the information's in Rome. So that's what we're continuing to pray in all of our different, throughout the nation to hopefully have him canonized. So, and he's also from an area that I grew up in. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you a little bit about how I really like the title of your organization called Women Who Stay, because that is the story of my life and the fact that I am Lakota. My name is Germaine Littlebear. My maiden name was Germaine Whiteface. Now I'm different in a sense of the different presenters that you may have had, in the fact that although I know Jody Roy, I think I listened to her presentation, and she's in Chicago, I think, so she's in a really urban area. I'm in Rapid City, South Dakota, and this is where I'm gonna have a little PowerPoint that I want to be able to, and please have patience with me. I've never done this before, so let's hope that it works. Okay, so I'm old, we didn't grow up with computers. So can you see this?
Did you hit share screen?
Let's see. Let me see. I did. Okay. Let me see here. Where's share screen? Okay. I found it. Share screen. Okay. Now
and then click on your PowerPoint.
Now I click on my PowerPoint.
Just say continue. And you're going to need to make your PowerPoint big.
Where is it?
So X out of your, and then go to here. I'm going to do something quickly. go to your camera and just stop the video for a moment?
Forgive me.
We've
No
all-
worries, take your time.
Don't worry.
All right, now we can do it. Are you ready?
Mhm.
Okay, so you're gonna wanna turn your video on and then go to share screen again.
Okay. Yeah.
Slideshow. From beginning.
Great. We see it.
Click it again from beginning. Okay,
I think we're there. Okay, this is a picture of the Badlands, and the reason I really had this picture up on this PowerPoint is because I was not born on the reservation. I was born in Wall, South Dakota, which is right in the Badlands of South Dakota, and so that is one of the features that we have in South Dakota, and it's about Wall, South Dakota is about 52 miles from Rapid City, and that's where I grew up. And the reason I grew up in Rapid City, my parents both grew up on the reservation, but my dad, when he was in World War II, when he came back from the war and he connected with my mother, who they both had gone to Holy Rosary Mission on the Pine Ridge Reservation, I went to college and became a teacher, and he wanted his kids to grow up off the reservation so that we would have more opportunities. That's what he felt. So his first teaching job was in Wall, South Dakota, which is in the middle of the Black Hills of South Dakota, and it's about 52 miles from here. It's a great tourist attraction. Many people have heard of Wall Drug, maybe, because that's one that's great. And here's the Black Hills of South Dakota, and that's really where Rapid City is located, right in the Black Hills. They call it Rapid City sometimes the gateway to the Black Hills, as well as Wall. We're the gateway to the Black Hills. And so here's kind of a picture of the Black Hills. And one of the reasons they called it the Black Hills is because when you look at it from a distance, because it's so, if you can see all the different trees and everything like that, that it looks black from a distance. So they call it the Black Hills. And the Black Hills were always considered sacred to the Lakota people, because in the Treaty of 1868, it was designated that the Black Hills would never be occupied by other people. However, they discovered gold in the Black Hills, and so it kind of was overrun by settlers, and now, of course, it's totally occupied by other people. So, and that's something that is probably something that people are always praying for, return of the Black Hills. Now there's Blackout Peak, and Blackout Peak was considered the highest peak in the Black Hills. And it used to be called Harney Peak, but they found out I think it was a general or colonel, that he had massacred many Native American people. So they really worked very hard. Some of our Lakota elders worked very hard to have the name changed. And then they did change it to, so now it is known as Blackout Peak. And I really, let me tell you, have been inspired by Blackout Peak, because Blackout had a vision on standing on Blackout Peak and looking over everything and saying, he could see everything as one, and that's really the vision that I have of God's vision is we are one. Blackout's vision is one, and we want to have a vision as one too, with all the harmony and with all people and all things, all the animals, the plants, the rocks, and everything. We're all sacred. They're all beings and all considered beings. And this is a picture of the Pine Ridge Reservation, and that is the reservation that I am from. However, I did not grow up there. I spent many, many days down on the reservation with relatives, because all my relatives do live down on the reservation. And you could see the Badlands on the background too, because a lot of the land wasn't necessarily real good land for farming, but it was good for grazing. So a lot of the land is for grazing land, but also it is filled with a lot of Badlands also. And that is a sign that it said when you're entering the Pine Ridge Reservation. It's about 100, and it depends on which direction you go. It's about 85 miles in one direction. It's about 120 miles if you go around in a different direction. But it's located in Ogallala, Lakota County, which is considered the poorest nation in the United States. So we do have great poverty on our reservations. This is a Diocese of Rapid City, and the reason I put that in there's they consider 9 reservations in South Dakota, although I'm responsible as the Director of Native Ministry for 5 of those reservations, and that's Standing Rock, Cheyenne River, Pine Ridge, Lower Brule, and Rosebud. And so you can see we have a very large area. I have a large area to cover. I'm only part-time, so it is a challenge for me to be able to go to all the reservations, although it is my goal. And it says this, the Diocese of Rapid City serves the reservations west of the Missouri River, namely the Standing Rock, Cheyenne River, Pine Ridge, Rosebud, and Lower Brule reservations. And so it's really been an experience for me, because just like other people, you live in the area that you live in, you don't always go to all the different parts of the state, so I haven't been to all of them. My grandfather was from the Rosebud Reservation. His name was Fred Whiteface. That was my dad's name too. And he was full blood. My dad was not. He was married to my grandmother, who was half, because her parents were half. And her parents was half. One was at full blood and then one was white. So her name was Clifford, and she married Fred Whiteface. And so that's my maiden name is Whiteface. And I'm from the Pine Ridge Reservation. However, my grandfather was from the Rosebud Reservation. And the next one I have is a picture of St. Agnes in Manderson. And that is the church that Blackout attended, but also that is a church that I attended as a child, because my grandmother lived in the Manderson district. And my grandmother, the reason I have so important, I felt like this was kind of I call it a backdrop for success, because I really like the title of Women Who Stay, and as a result of the example that I had of the people before me that were Lakota Catholics. And my grandmother was totally Catholic, and she was born in 1894. So that was long before the Freedom of Religious Act came to being. And, when the boarding schools came to the United States and they start bringing the Indian children to boarding schools, the native language was forbidden, and also it was forbidden to practice the Lakota way. So the different ones became Christian. And my grandmother was no exception. She was an Episcopal, but when she was 10 years old, her family converted to Catholicism. And my grandmother was absolutely the inspiration to me to be a Catholic, to stay Catholic. And I always say I was born Lakota and I was born Catholic, and that's who I am. My grandmother totally lived 100% as a Catholic. And she could speak fluent Lakota. She lived her whole life on the reservation. She had long hair and she had braids, and she was so beautiful. And I wish I had a picture of her, but I didn't have this 30 minutes. It gave me a little bit of time. I was busy at home doing other things too, so I didn't get a chance to get that picture, which I wanted to have. But also, so this Manderson is on the reservation, the Pine Ridge Reservation, very, very small town. And Nicholas Blackout also, he's responsible for converting 400 Native American people to the Catholic way of life. And he was baptized on December 6th. And so because he felt that St. Nicholas had something in common with the generosity of the Lakota people, he took the name Nicholas. So that's how he became Nicholas Blackout. And he was baptized on December 6th. So that's how he took the name Nicholas Blackout. But this also was a church that I attended many, many years with my grandmother. My grandmother lived 9 miles north of Manderson. And we also attended this little church, and it's called St. Peter's Church. And as a matter of fact, my grandmother, when we were little kids and we'd stay with her, this was very active parish. And we had people, Jesuits from the Holy Rosary Mission, who would come out. Manderson's probably about 25 miles from Pine Ridge in the Holy Rosary Mission. But the Jesuits would come out and they would say mass out there, and we would go. And it was a really, really kind of an active parish. Every year they'd have a St. Peter's Day picnic, and my grandmother had us training around her house. We'd be running. They had gunny sack race, wheelbarrow race, and all that stuff. And we really loved being out there. But we also had great examples in our lives too of the Jesuits who came out, and they would play with us and they would visit my grandmother. And in those days, the parish priest visited all the different homes on the reservation, and the priests would come and visit with my grandmother at her location at 9 miles north of Manderson. And we really loved being a part of being Catholic. And my grandmother would also sing to us in Lakota, so we got the best of both worlds in that respect. And we even stayed with her, and I said to her, Grandma, do not speak to me in English, only speak to me in Lakota. So she was trying to teach me, and I'm writing everything down because, it had been forbidden. So I never grew up knowing the Lakota way. I did not grow up knowing the language, and neither did my dad. And the reason was, I think about the elders and how much foresight they have and how much wisdom they have. Because my grandmother's mother, who was half Indian, but she had never lived out the reservation. She could only speak Lakota. Wanted my grandmother to learn English first because she could see what was happening is that the reservations were being taken over by non-Indians, and she knew that it was too hard to be able to not be able to speak English. So she had my grandmother learn English first, and then my grandmother knew how to speak Lakota, and she's very fluent in Lakota. And this little church, her brother, we always called him Uncle Bill, although in the Lakota way, who had been my grandfather. She lived out there in the country on the reservation with no electricity, no running water, no vehicle, so he would ride horseback, and then sometimes the people would come, the elders would come in a team and wagon, and to this little church. And so that's kind of how I grew up. And we'd have my grandmother and those of us when we were little kids, we'd walk to the highway, and the priest would pick us up and take us to church because we didn't have a car. So but she was such a great example to me that I never ever wanted to be anything other than like my grandmother. She taught us to pray the rosary every single day, so that was just kind of a thing before we go to bed. And we say, well, maybe she just wanted us to settle down and pray the rosary. But I always led the rosary. And she said one day she bumped up against the bed, and I sang, Hail Mary, full of grace. I was still praying. I had a wonderful grandmother. And when my dad moved to South Dakota, he taught there for 5 years, and then he moved. So we went to public school in those days, but we were very, very nice people and everything. And I enjoyed being, I was only 4 years old. I didn't go to school there, but I enjoyed all the students that my dad taught and everything. But then we moved to Rapid City, and I went to a Catholic school, St. John's Evangelist School, and I was taught by the Benedictines. And I just put a picture of the Benedictines as they wore habits. We still do have Benedictine sisters in our Terra Santa in a St. Martin's Monastery in Rapid City. We still have some Benedictines, however, they don't wear habits anymore. And there's only one sister that's left from when I went to school, and her name's Sister Lorraine, and she's out there at St. Martin's. And I occasionally have had the occasion to be able to go out there and visit with the sisters and have meals with them too. So they were very much a great influence in my life. So I said, this is a backdrop to success, is where I had a foundation. And I think that's what has really helped me through the years, is the foundation that I received in my Catholic faith. But it didn't ever change the fact that I was still Lakota, but I was Catholic. And they helped me to not ever think that I was different, but always that I was an equal. And I really blossomed and grew in that Catholic school called St. John the Evangelist. It's no longer available. It's no longer a school anymore, but it was, fortunately, when I was a child. And then I went, the Lakota way. Well, like I said, I'm Catholic, but I'm also Lakota. And also, when I was a teenager, when I was a young adult and after I got married, I never grew up with Native American people because I grew up on the reservation, so I really felt insecure in those days because when I went to Catholic school, I blossomed and grew, and I had the Benedictines. They were great teachers. But my parents moved to a different part of town, which is a little more affluent part of town. My dad had went into the business world, had quit teaching, went into the business world, was doing very well in the business world. So we moved to a more affluent part of Rapid City. Well, I didn't realize at that point in time that I would have to go to a public school. So I did, and they moved all their desks away from me and didn't want to touch me and call me squaw. And and there was only about 2 or 3 of us in our school. So people didn't understand and know that how hard it was, and how my dad didn't realize how difficult it would be. So I wasn't grow up with Lakota people, but we would save our money. We would go there in the weekends and we'd go there and visit all our relatives and everything. And I used to think, wow, this must be what it's like to be a white person, because I was not in the minority when I was on the reservation. And I really loved being there, and we'd save our money. So anyway, I put this medicine wheel here simply because my sister, as we grew up, we were eventually married people that were non-Indians, but eventually it didn't work out. You know, we got divorced, and my sister married a Native American man, and his name was Bill Braveheart, and he practiced the Lakota way, and my sister went to Lakota way, no longer necessarily practiced the Catholic way, but became a Lakota, went to Lakota way. And I put the medicine wheel because the medicine wheel is a great symbol for our culture. And today in our culture, in our Rapid City, we do practice enculturation in all of our masses at our church, which is an extension of the Holy Rosary Mission. We practice the Lakota way, and we start each mass with the 4 direction colors, and this denotes the 4 directions. The black denotes the thunder beings, and every year, I think it's in the springtime, in Blackout Peak, my husband and many people go up to the top of Blackout Peak, and they call it welcoming back the thunder beams. And that comes from the west, as does the black. The black denotes the west, and then the red denotes the north, which is the Buffalo Nation. And also the east is the Elk Nation, and the white is the winged animals. And so that's the birds, and that's what we talked about, having all things as one. And we honor all the animals because they also bring us nourishment. They help us to preserve the Lakota people, but through those animals. So we honor them in a special way. And there, I put down the Lakota values. Now, I did not grow up as a Lakota in the Lakota way, but my sister, when she joined that, I became very supportive of her because there was always including in there praying. And I was very much a prayerful person in the fact that I had received baptism in the Holy Spirit in 1977. And I went to many charismatic prayer groups, and then we practiced prayer meetings at our church. So praying was such a great part of the Lakota way. And so I really supported my sister when at first I didn't want her to at first because I didn't know, but then as she became very sincere in what she was doing, did I support her in whatever she was doing, as long as praying was a part of it. So the Lakota values are praying, respect, caring and compassion, honesty and truth, generosity and caring, humility and wisdom. And I think about how that's Lakota values and how I grew up as a Catholic in the Catholic way. And these are Lakota values, and we have the 10 Commandments, and we have principles at which we live. And to me, none of those go in contrary to anything that I believed. So I really embraced the Lakota way with my sister, and I went with her to many ceremonies and rituals. They had the vision quest. And my husband, he grew up on the reservation, and he grew up going to Holy Rosary Mission. He went there for 13 years. Well, see, I divorced when my kids were little. When my husband, I told you, he had a drinking problem, my first husband. And I did not want my kids to grow up in alcoholism. I actually had grown up in alcoholism because my dad had a drinking problem too, but he quit drinking when I was 20 years old. And I did not want to have that to happen to my kids. So my priest, I went to my priest. I didn't do anything without talking to the priest. And so they tried to get him to come back to do something differently, but he was totally unwilling. So he left, and he went to North Carolina. And so I stayed Catholic, and they annulled my marriage in 1981. So I was able to continue to practice my Catholic religion in the way that I wanted to. But also when my husband, when he came back, he went to Holy Rosary for 13 years. And when he graduated, he was drafted into the Vietnam War. Those were the years I'm in the age of the Vietnam War. He was drafted into the Vietnam War. So he had fought the war and prayed, but he had the Catholic values of prayer and also the Lakota way of prayer. So when he was in the war, he was a point man, which means he was the first one out in the jungle. He had to lead people out there. He rescued pilots that were shot down in DMZ. So he had a very, very dangerous job. But he said his chaplain was his best friend, that he had learned prayer through the Lakota way and also the Catholic way. So he prayed while he was in Vietnam and he survived, and what a great thing, he survived. And he came back and he met up with a medicine man on his way back. And when he went the Lakota way, when he came back from the military in Vietnam, he went the Lakota way. And he tells me about the Vision Quest, which is many people today, before they get involved in any of the ceremonies and rituals of the Sundance or the sweat lodges or the healing ceremony, they do a Vision Quest. And that's the today, women also Sundance. I never Sundance, and my sister did. My sister was a Sundancer, but they go up on pray for 4 days and fast and pray for a vision. And then the sweat lodge is the place where they pray, and that's really a really sacred little place where you climb in. They have rocks. They have many rocks of fire, and they heat up those rocks to white. They go in the sweat lodge. They crawl in because they say we crawl before we walk. We go inside there and they pray and they sing, and it's a great feeling of being close to nature and to God in that sweat lodge. You get, you sweat and you feel like you're cleansed. You have a cleansing on that sweat lodge. And then the Sundance includes fasting, prayer, and sacrifice. And it really denotes, they pierce their skin and they put pegs in there and they dance for 4 days without eating, and they pray. They have a tree in the middle of a Sundance that is representative of God, and they pray and they fast and they sacrifice. They pull those eventually after 4 days, they break through with the piercing. And my husband did that for many, many years and 24 years. And then they have healing ceremonies where they pray for people that are very, very sick, and the medicine man goes there. So those are some great ceremonies, rituals that I became a part of too, that I supported. My sister was sick too. And my husband, when he came back, was medically discharged from the military because he got a disease while he was there called Addison's disease, which the adrenal insufficiency, his adrenal glands didn't work. So he was unable to handle a stress. So anyway, but he came apart and he became part of all of the different ceremonies. And I was fortunate enough to go to some of those and be a part of that because of the support that I gave to my sister and my husband. And my son even became a Sundancer and my nephews. And so I did take part in that, which was really, really, I really, really enjoyed that. And I still do. I thought I would give a little bit of the demographics of the Pine Ridge Reservation. It's 92.6% Native American. It's one of the largest reservations with the Native American population. Only 3.8% are white, 2.8% are Hispanic, 0.4% are multiracial, 0.4% are Black, and 0% Asian. But the religion is 29% religious, 14.3% Catholic. So that's really a good amount of people. I think our whole Diocese of Rapid City is only 7% Catholic, but they're Anglican, other religions, Christian, Presbyterian, Baptist, Pentecostal, Lutheran, Mormon, Muslim, and even, no, I guess there's no Mormon, no Muslim or Jews. They were there for a while, but not anymore. But anyway, it also shows you that there was a lot of the Native Americans that also were brought up as Christians, as well as becoming the Lakota way. The Rapid City demographics, which is what I grew up in, is 82.5% white, and it's only 6.7% Native American. But that's what I grew up, like I say, it's even more. Now today, there's a lot of Native Americans that are in Rapid City because there's great poverty on Ogallala, Lakota County in Pine Ridge. It's the poorest nation in the United States. So many of them have gone up to Rapid City, which is very sad in some ways because a lot of them are also a part of the homeless population and also the part of, just not poverty, and just being lost almost. And it's really heartbreaking to see that. But that is part of the Native American population here in Rapid City. And the South Dakota demographics, you can see, is 81.5% white and 9% Native American. There's all those different reservations, which I really am hopeful that I can go and be a part of learning and being part of their reservations and the celebrations and everything that they have there. We are very, very fortunate in the values that they have of generosity, because giveaways are very much a part of the Lakota way. Also, when you think about traveling to the countries and all the ceremonies that the Lakota people have, is giving away part of what's part of you in your home and everything like that. People have memorial dinners for the lost loved ones, and then I get confirmations, weddings, sometimes that they'll have giveaways where they give away to everybody that's there. They'll give them something, part of their home, not necessarily what they have in their home, because part of their homes is also money, and sometimes it costs money to buy the things that they want to give away, but they do give away. The Native American people are very generous people. And I designed this in a sense, and I had my assistant help me make it, because this is a Diocese of Rapid City. In the Lakota way, we say everything's a circle, and so I put it as a circle because that's us, and my philosophy and my way of life is that I'm Lakota and I'm Catholic. You know what I mean? So all of us are, those of us that are Catholic, whether we're Native American, we're German, we're Irish, Norwegian, whatever nationality we may, what ethnicity is we are, which is part of the whole of the diocese, is there's many ethnicities and cultures. In the prayer of Blackout, it said, have us respect for all peoples of all cultures. And so when I talked about we are one, that's carrying out also the vision of God of we are all one. It's Blackout's vision that he had on Blackout Peak, that we are all one. And I wanted to show how we are all one. And these are the boundaries in a sense of that we live in. But this is what all of us in the Diocese of Rapid City. And we want to learn how to be good neighbors, God's greatest commandment, to love our neighbor as ourselves. And to me, that's what we need to do, whether we're Lakota or we're non-Native. We need to be able to be, I say our souls do not have a color, so we want to learn to be loving and kind to all people, whatever race or ethnicity we are. And this is me. And I don't know if I'm going past my time or not, but I wanted to share a little bit about me, in the fact that I'm a Lakota Catholic. And I say that we every year in one of my jobs is to have a retreat, and we just had it during Labor Day weekend. It's called Changhuanka. And what that means is the Holy Road. And what the whole purpose of that retreat is to put together the Lakota way with the Catholic Church, because we say there's only one God. And it's primarily designed for Native American Catholics, to come. And we have what they call the sweat lodge ceremony. They call the Inipi ceremony. And we have a sweat lodge that's offered in that retreat. So the Lakota people, if they want to go to the sweat lodge, they certainly can do that. We didn't have a sweat this year because we are in drought in South Dakota. We felt it was too dangerous to build a fire. You have to build a fire and put the rocks in there to get them hot enough to go into the sweat lodge. And so we chose not to have that, but we also have a pipe ceremony, a sacred pipe ceremony, that we had Lakota men were able to come and present to the pipe, and the men actually everybody could smoke the pipe and share and be a part of the whole. Everybody that's there, we're part of the whole. We're all Lakota Christian. And that is the purpose, and the design of it is based on the Christian movement. So each person, Lakota Christians, give talks on different things, on the different topics, and try to help others, to be able to practice the Lakota way as well as the Catholic Church, and not feel like you have to make a choice. There's no choice to make, whether we're Lakota or whether we're Christian. We are praying. We are people that believe in one God, and we pray to one God, and we hope to live that way of life. And just like the Lakota values and our principles and our way of life of the 10 Commandments, we hope to have it a way of life that we are able to live that way rather than just talk that way, and be an example, just like my grandmother was an example to me. I am the director of Native Ministry of the Diocese of Rapid City. I'm also a commissioned lay minister. And my husband, who was a Lakota Christian, born that way, he and I eventually met. He was my boyfriend when I was 16 years old. I met him on the reservation because my family had a band. And like I told you, I grew up in Rapid City, where there was very few Native Americans at the time when I grew up. And so my dad was a musician, my brother was a musician, my sisters were musicians. Me, I wasn't a musician. I loved to dance. So they would go down on the reservation, they play music, for all the people, the entertainment, what's a great part of our way of life, really. We need to have entertainment as well as prayer and work, and so we went down there and I loved to dance, and my cousin would find my former spouse, and I don't know how I met him for sure, except maybe it was dancing, find me, Germaine's here, you need to go dance with her. So he'd come and we'd dance all night, and it was till I was 16, he was 18. Then the end of the summer came and it was time to go back to school, and I came back to Rapid City, and I went to school and I went to college, and he got drafted and he went to Vietnam. Never saw him again for 25 years. Had my 4 kids and got divorced and was a single mother. Eventually that same cousin that used to find him to go dance with me found me at Walmart and he found him on the reservation and said, I saw Germaine, she's single, you need to call her. And so he did. And we spent 28 years together. He passed away 2 years ago. But unfortunately, he worked very, very hard. And he was a commissioned lay minister too. He went back to the Catholic Church, even the Lakota way. He grew up Catholic, so he came back to the Catholic Church. And he taught me a lot about the Lakota way and the fact that he was a sun dancer for 24 years. And of course, he was Native American too. So that's where I became Little Bear, Whiteface Little Bear. So I always tease. Humor is one of the great attributes, I think, of the Lakota, the Native American people, and it needs to be a part of all of us. But I always say my name is Jermaine Whiteface Little Bear, so just call me Panda. And so, that is very, very important to me, is that I was able to be who I am. And who I am is a Lakota Catholic, and I'm a commissioned lay minister. I do adult education. I've been doing it for 16 years, and that's teaching the Catholic faith, and it's called Adult Education and Faith Formation. And as a commissioned lay minister working for the Catholic Church, I get a chance and an opportunity to work at my parish, which is the St. Isaac Jogues Parish right here. This is my church, and it was primarily designed for the Lakota people, because it is extension of the Holy Rosary Mission down there on Pine Ridge Reservation, who was taught by the Jesuits. So we also have Jesuits at our church, and it was primarily designed for the Lakota people. Now today, as a result of so much acceptance and change and everything, we have people of all cultures at our church, but every month we have an acculturate at Mass, and we pray the 4 Direction song, and we have Lakota, we have the smudging, which is, I think that Jody talked about how smudging and sweetgrass and sage and everything are part of our prayers, and we do that, and that's purification, help us to be purified before we have any kind of ceremony, which is, for us, of course, reminds me of the how we the penitential rite in our church, where we want to be free of sin when we have to practice our way. So the smudging helps us to be purified and to be free in order to practice the thing, our way of our Mass and our way of life. So anyway, I thank you for asking me to be a part of your organization of Women Who Stay. And I just thought this is a backdrop of me of success, and not of success in having a lot of money, but having success of being able to be who I am, not only a Lakota, but also a Catholic, Lakota Catholic. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'll try.
Thank you so much, Jermaine. Much appreciated. I have a number of questions, but I'm going to see if others have questions first. Feel free again to put them in chat or raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question.
I saw Joyce has her hand up. Joyce O'Brien.
Right, Joyce O'Brien.
I can't hear you, Joyce. You're muted, Joyce.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. My question is, how can you compare the Lakota way of praying with what we think of as the Christian way of praying? In other words, who or what is being prayed to in the Lakota way?
God. There's only one God. They call it Tunkashila, or you could say Wakantanka. There's only one God, and that's the reason why we can put it all together. Both, because there's only one God. And the Lakota speak pray to one God too. So, and it's
this one God is not related to a facet of nature or of I'm thinking of that sometimes certain civilizations have a concept of God and nature.
No, it's God. It's
Okay,
God.
thank you.
Mhm.
Margie Nugowski asks about, can you please tell us about other Lakota traditions that are akin to Christian or Catholic rituals? For example, the purification process that you described. So are there other examples you can give?
Well, I'm sorry, but who is it that's talking?
This is a question from Margie.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. There you are, Margie. Okay.
There
Now,
she
you're
is.
asking, what was the question you asked?
Go ahead, Margie.
You're up mute. Oh, yeah.
Yes, you described the purification process and how that was akin to some elements of Catholic or Christian tradition or ritual. And I'm wondering if you could describe some others. It's so beautiful to learn about those similarities.
Well, I think about sacrifice. I think about sacrifice and, and in fasting, which is very similar to, we always in Lent want people to fast during Lent. Well, this is in the Sundance, they fast for 4 days, and I've been to many Sundances. Yeah, they fast for 4 days. They don't eat or drink water in 4 days, so, and then the sacrifice too, and the shedding of blood, which is also the sacrifices, when they do when they pierce. So that's denoting in a sense the sacrifice that Jesus made for us and shedding his blood for us, so it's very sacred and spiritual. I participated in many Sundances, even though I wasn't, I'd always say I'm Catholic, so I guess I got to be a part of everything though, because I'm Lakota too, so I supported everybody that was did that, and I saw the sacrifice.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's another question asking about how people who practice the Lakota way, how do they feel about the pending canonization of Nicholas Blackout?
How do they know what?
How do they feel about the canonization of Nicholas Blackout, those who practice the Lakota way?
Well, at this point in time, it's a difficult time right now in today. And the reason is the number of bodies they found at the residential schools in Canada. And then also they found some bodies that they found at the Carlisle school, they brought back to the Rosebud Reservation. That now some of the people are upset about churches, Christianity at all, because of the fact of the boarding schools that the words that they spoke was kill the Indian, save the man, right? They wanted to kill the Indians, so that's why the language was forbidden, the religion was forbidden. They brought them in, the kids in the Carlisle Institute Clearback in Pennsylvania, they actually took kids off the reservation and took them over there and had to make them leave their whole families, and so they were over there. And then when they came back, they didn't fit because they dressed them like in clothes that, and cut their hair and everything, made them look like Europeans rather than Lakotas, so that's how the language is lost. So many people are angry about all the things that were lost as a result of the boarding schools, which happened many years ago. But then some people are still upset about the fact that there was, that wasn't good. There was many ways that it wasn't good. Some ways it was very, very good. My mother and my relatives, they had very great experiences. My husband, he knew and he saw some of the abuses, but there's some of them lived in poverty at home, and the missions gave them a way to take care of the kids when the parents were not able to, so in some ways it was good, but then some way people are very, very angry and upset about it, and upset at the Catholic Church instead of any churches at all, that came, missionaries that came to convert the Indians. And so right now, even me, I have no problem with being a Catholic, but people ask me, you can be a Catholic after all the things that have happened, but that's who I am. I was born Catholic and I was born Lakota, and I wasn't alive and neither were the priests that we have now. And I always say, we have this wonderful priest that came to the retreat for the Changhuanka because he works and he's a pastor on the reservation. And he came and he was so discouraged by the fact that there was a person that was standing at the end of the reservation with a sign that says, no churches on the reservation. And he was concerned. I know in Canada, I think they burned down some of the churches. So he was very, very concerned about the churches here, especially on the reservation, if they would be burned down. But he came to the retreat and there were so many people there that really believed in the Catholicism and the Lakota way. So he felt very encouraged by the fact that there was people that were willing to be Lakota Catholics and not just be angry about what happened, and had to move on from there. So anyway, but right now it's a very, very hard time. We really need a lot of prayer, because we don't want those things to happen. We want to make sure the Catholic Church stays as a Bible church and that people don't burn down the Catholic churches or anything. It's a prayer for me too. I pray.
Yeah. Thank you, Germaine. Ashley, you have a question.
Thank you, Jermaine. You've talked a lot about poverty at Pine Ridge, and I'm just curious what efforts the Catholic Church, either through your diocese or other churches, are doing to address the poverty on the reservations.
Poverty on the reservations. Well, in our church, because of the pandemic, many of the things had to be put aside because we have a pantry that we have all the time at normally at St. Isaac Joe's where people that are hungry or whatever can come up there and get food. But during the pandemic, then of course stopped some of those things. But also in our church, that's what we can do is to always be there for the people. And I know even in my position, it hasn't been established again, but because I've been only part-time, they just 2 years we didn't have an office of Native Ministry in the diocese, but they had a fund that people that came up there here, like needed gas money or food or anything like that could. But as far as the homeless population, the only thing we've been able to do is provide food and clothing, and to people that would be willing to have it. There's a camp out here called Middle where they're opened it up for, I can't remember what the name of it's an organization, Indians.com. Anyway, I think they opened that for people to stay out there and they have food and everything for the homeless people to be able to stay. They have a Cornerstone Rescue Mission too, which Church Response was also started as a result of Monsignor O'Connell. He was a priest when I went to St. John's. That was his first year being a priest in 1957. He died a couple of years ago, and he was a Monsignor. But he started an organization called Church Response, which was to help homeless people to come there if they needed food or especially food, and they would have food. And then I think some of them provide money for gas and stuff like that if people come up from the reservation and don't have money to get back for whatever reason to visit sick or whatever. So yeah, it is very much a sad thing to see the poverty. And I know on Sacred Heart in Pine Ridge, they have kind of like an open door policy. They live right on the reservation at Sacred Heart in Pine Ridge, and they cook. They have meals every day, and they give sandwiches and food and stuff like people as they come to the reservation. They provide that on the reservation too. So they're very strong. Sacred Heart Church in Pine Ridge is very strong. So, and they are a member of the Sangatari with the conference, and they raise money, in order to do that. So they're very active on the Pine Ridge Reservation as far as feeding the hungry, and they have clothing too for them.
Can I ask a quick follow? So is the poverty related to lack of jobs, or you've referenced alcoholism a few times?
Alcoholism, alcoholism is rampant, and so is methamphetamines, I guess, but not many industry, not much industry down there. There's not any industry or anything like that, but alcoholism is rampant. And I have to say this, I grew up in alcoholism and married an alcoholic, and I've been in Al-Anon for families of alcoholics for 44 years, so if there's a way, I've been a speaker in many places, and I've gone down the reservation on many occasions, but it's very difficult to there's many people now are working to stay sober and to be, not be drug free and everything, but it's very much not barely scratching the surface, not even scratching the surface, but that's something to be prayed about too. So that, and then also violence, you know what I mean, because of the fact of, violence was instituted many, many years ago as a result of some of the boarding schools. They do attribute some of that too, because they were abused in those boarding schools. And so they learned that. So, but we can't blame people. We have to learn how to overcome all that, but yeah, so it's a sad state of affairs, but we pray and we do what we can, I guess. I try to contribute as much money as I can to help, to fund the things that we need for the people.
Jermaine, this is Ann again. I know when we first talked, you said that you had hoped that you could address many of the social issues that you see for the Native people there.
Mhm.
What would you want to see from the broader church in the United States? I mean, I know that the U.S. bishops have a Native American ministry. I know that there are that there's help given to the poorest of the dioceses in the United States, but it just, none of it feels like enough. What would you want to see from the national Catholic Church?
The way I view things, and I'm going to do this. This is a goal of mine. I wrote a little booklet that is from the Catechism of the Catholic Church, is that you see in the demographics that the majority of the people are white in our state, in our community. We can't overcome racism. White people can overcome racism. So what I want to do is what my purpose and my function that I've decided on the booklet that I have is, how do we live God's greatest commandment? And I think that's for everybody. That's for not only Native Americans, but it's for white people too, because you see, we can't overcome racism because we aren't racist. Anybody can be prejudiced and anybody can discriminate, but racism is really when you're in charge of the government. When you're in the majority of people and you're in charge of the government, you can impose your values on others, and that's really just like in Pine Ridge, really, where they're Native American primarily, see, they can keep the white people out if they wanted to, because there's more Native Americans, but they live pretty much in harmony with those that have lived there for a lot of years, because they wouldn't live there if they didn't really love the people. Some people don't. If they come in as, when you come in and you want to help, when you kind of are down here, I say, we're helping instead of we're equals. I think that's where we have to really come into that frame of thinking, is that we're all equals, and that's really what I want the Native American people too. Also, that's why my goal is to visit all the reservations. And I'm also, with that retreat that we just had, is based on the Cursillo movement. So also they talk about Ultrea, I think, in the Cursillo movement is what I want us to bring us all together again. I want those that were Lakota Christians to come together again so we can continue to build that up and strengthen Lakota people as understanding that when people abuse the Catholic Church, they abuse us. Whether it's a sexual abuse or whatever, it's violence or whatever, it's burning down, mistreating people or whatever. If they give out the Catholic Church, we have to understand that that's me that they're getting mad at too if I'm Catholic. As well as I'm Lakota, if I'm Catholic, they abuse me too. So I want us to be really in that frame of thinking that we are Catholics and we want to be all one. That's why I made that demographic, or that thing of the circle, that we are all one. We're all Catholic, but we can't, with the majority of people white, we cannot make whites not racist. So let me tell you, I grew up with discrimination, and when my parents moved over, they wanted to move all their desks away from me, call me squaw. They wanted to have a petition to have my parents not move into the neighborhood. And no matter where you go, no matter where I go, nobody knows, I think she's the right kind of Indian. I think that doesn't matter. They don't, I'm only a Native American. I'm not any, I'm not. They don't know. I can be mistreated as well as anybody else can, no matter where I am. So if we accept that as a way of life, but we don't want to, we know that that's always going to happen, but we don't want to react to that every time. That's what I hope. We want to also be true to who we are and know that if I'm Catholic, I'm Lakota, I need to live like the Lakota values, I need to live the values of the church, and that's love and respect for all people, so that's my goal. And that's what I hope that we can accomplish some way. If I can do a little part, my part is
Yeah.
ministry.
No, thank you, Jermaine. As you were talking about the Lakota values and we heard this in the last couple of weeks too, about the values of respect, and we are all one with one another and nature. It is so, it's jarring to know how the Native people have been treated when their values are so far removed from the mistreatment.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
And as you said, it must be an incredible struggle not to react to the mistreatment and try to maintain the values that are part of your culture.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's not easy. You have to be willing to do that. That's what we learn, is to learn how to love all people, with the help of God, with the help of Changhuanka, one God loves all of us. We learn how to respect and love all people. Yeah, it's really hard because a lot of people are very angry, and that's the thing that I don't want. I wish that there's some way I understand the anger, but I want us not to have it. I wish there's some way that we could get free of that. And I think, I don't know, that's what I hope. That's my prayer.
Peggy Clarity has a question. Peggy, go ahead.
Yes, first, I just want to say, Jermaine Little Bear, I'm so impressed by your great big heart. With all the racism and other negative experiences you've had, you're kind of got your heart wide open, embracing other people and not rising above it, trying to move forward. And I'm just very moved by that. I wanted to ask if there are any bright spots in education for the future. I'm aware of a St. Joseph's Catholic school, but are there other good schools? Hold out hope for your children.
Yeah, St. Joseph, I think, is a very good school. It really teaches a lot of Lakota. One of my friends, her grandkids go to school there, and they've really been very well treated and learned so much and was really accepted. Yeah, I don't know of any others that's the one, that people would want to, that I think is the best, at least here in South Dakota, but yeah, it would be nice if there was more that came up that way. But yeah, at this point in time, I don't know of any others. I don't know that. I'm old now, so all my kids are all grown up. My grandkids, they all moved away, so I don't have any here in Rapid City, or I have a couple that go to Red Cloud school. They do go to Red Cloud, and they graduated from there. And 2 of them graduated from college, and 3 of them graduated from college now. And so, yeah. So I just hope that I always say, and I said this to Father Held, who was the pastor of Holy Rosary, we need to just be who we are. And that is, if I'm Lakota, I am, but I'm also Catholic, and why am I that? Because that's how I was born. This is the way God made me. So this is who I need to be, but we also have to be proud also of the Catholic faith. Sure, we hear a lot of things that have happened and people say, how can you be Catholic? It's because that's those, people, I call it persecution of the church. All these people misused us, and abused us. And it made it hard for us to be proud of who we are, the same way that happened to us as Lakota people. So we have to continue. Well, Jesus was mistreated too, right? So we have to also believe and accept that God says, forgive them. They know not what they do. And I think that's what happens a lot of times. People don't understand how difficult it is when we don't love all people, and we judge and we criticize, we condemn, and we misuse and mistreat. It's not fun. I had to do a lot of work to get over it, let me tell you. Thank God.
Yeah.
But God works, right?
God works.
We let him.
Jermaine, if anyone who is listening to this would want to help the diocese or help the people of certain reservations in South Dakota with a financial gift, what do you recommend? What would be most helpful to people?
to people, well, you know, all of the reservation schools, like St. Isaac Jogues, our little community there is, we have the Mother Butler Center, which is a big center. They're always wanting it to be is very much of a place where people have funerals, they have celebrations, they have a lot of the Rapid City, the people, Indian people go there. They designed it actually, and I made my first communion there in 1956. You know, and it was because the St. Isaac Jogues Church wasn't built. Well, they didn't have one yet. They just had it in all this Mother Butler Center. So we went to church there, and it was down there by the Rapid Creek. And the reason it was by Rapid Creek, because all the Native Americans had the tents, and they were living along the creek because it was close to water. You know, so they built that as like an extension of Holy Rosary in order to help the Lakota people and be able to go to church and become part of being able to be fed and, you know, help through that. So, but then with the 72 flood, we had a flood in Rapid City in 1972, and it was wiped out, and our pastor was killed in that flood too. And so we moved up to the hill where we are now in the St. Isaac Jogues. And the Mother Butler Center is still a real viable building, although financially we are struggling at St. Isaac Jogues because of the fact that of the pandemic and everything. And we do have a lot of homeless people in Rapid City. So my thought was to donate because of the fact that there's so many homeless people in Rapid City, and we could probably help so many more people if we were a little more financially stable, but we are struggling at St. Isaac Jogues and the Mother Butler Center. And I know Red Cloud gets a lot of donations, you know, and they apply for donations. So they're right down in the Pine Ridge, you know, and Sacred Heart. But we in Rapid City, I have to say we're struggling, you know, and so with the homeless population that we have here in Rapid City, it's we are struggling. And we can't always provide for the people that they want to gather and have the funerals and everything for their people, but we have to charge money because we have to pay for electricity, and you know, and we used to not have to do that sometimes because we had enough money where we could just let them have them sometimes, you know, but of course we or charge a minimal amount, or now we're having to, so that it becomes a little less able for people to be able to rent the place, you know, so. That's my thought.
Yeah, thank you for those recommendations. One other question I have, and then perhaps somebody else has a question before we wrap up. What do you think it will mean to the Lakota people, to your diocese, if Black Elk in fact is canonized?
Is Black Elk canonized? What will that mean to the nation? Oh my gosh. It'll be so absolutely wonderful. It would be such a great example for all the Lakota people, I think, because he actually practiced the Lakota Christian way, because he was a medicine man, but he also was a catechist, you know, so he taught the two road philosophy of the red road was the good way, and then the black road was the way of the devil. So he also taught that way, and he taught many Christians, and they attribute him to 400 people becoming Catholic. It was a result of his, and so, but he lived that way, you know, so that I think he's a great example, you know, whether they'll accept it or not, we never know. You know, it's like they always say, you're not a prophet in your own country, you know, sometimes, but I think that will certainly those of us that have been working towards it, and those of us who live that way, you know, I hope that it will be just a really fabulous thing for us to have that a Lakota man.
Well, let's pray that Pope Francis announces that soon.
Yeah, we'll pray for miracles. Yeah, we gotta.
Yeah, we will. Any other questions that people have? Yeah, go ahead, Liz. Or Melanie, did you have a question?
I did, but I really want to just say to Germaine how much I appreciate your presentation. And I empathize too with where you feel that pain of why are you Catholic, or why do you persist as a Christian, or whatever. And many of us, you know, with our children, for example, who question where the church is on various teachings and are very much asking some of the same questions. We can empathize at least at that level, but I just so appreciate what you've shared today. I was concerned about the resources, because when I was working with the HIV/AIDS programs at the national level, and working with some of the tribes, I learned so much about the deficiencies in terms of Indian health services, the low levels of funding, which is also reflective of systemic racism, in my opinion. And the inability for tribes to meet the plethora of needs. There just was, just never enough resources. And I've been concerned with the pandemic that is just exacerbated in terms of need. So it's late for you to comment about that, but I'm glad you mentioned some places we can maybe make a difference privately. That would be good.
Yeah, the Oglala Lakota Nation in Pine Ridge, they really, really have worked during this pandemic to protect the people.
Yeah.
They really have, and I really commend them on that. Our governor has wanted to get rid of the history of the Lakota people in the school system. So there has been a little bit of a protest of that because, that's who South Dakota is too. We have Lakotas in South Dakota, so. We'll see what happens. We got to pray about that too.
Okay.
So Liz, do you want to ask a final question? And
Well, I'll ask a question and then segue into inviting all of you to join us for our last evening of the Women Who Weave in the Spirit. But my question, Germaine, is whether you have seen this new version of the New Testament. It's just been published, the First Nations version, an Indigenous translation of the New Testament. And I think it's truly hot off the presses. I think it came out last week. And I think it was a collaboration of a lot of different Indigenous Christians, and I just wondered if it had made its way to your diocese just yet.
Well, I haven't seen it. It could be now. We have a bookstore right next door. I just need to go check over there. But does it say who that translated? Who did it?
The name of the person who was the primary. I'm going to see if I can find it. I can't find it. I read an article about him, but it was a collaboration of a lot of different people from a lot of different tribes.
Thank you for offering me that, because I'll certainly look for that when I go next door. I'll go next door and look for it. But also, I know one of our deacons, Ben Blackout, from the Rosebud Reservation, did much work on translation for different things. So I was wondering and hoping whether he might have been part of that collaboration of that translation. So I'll look for it though. Thank you for giving me that information.
Well, I will say that the language is just so beautiful in it. And I haven't read the other translation that you just mentioned, but so evocative. And just for me, reading some of the gospel passages that are so familiar to me through this translation, I'm seeing a whole other dimension of meaning in them. So thank you, Germaine, for coming and sharing your story and these notes of hope that you've shared with us about being Catholic and Lakota. And as Melanie said, a lot of us could fill in the blank of being Catholic and something that makes it hard to stay. So I appreciate that inspiration. And I hope you'll join us next week, Germaine, and all of the rest of you who are here, because speaking of just the beautiful lyrical language, we are really blessed next week to have an author, Mona Susan Power. She is an award-winning author. She's a member of the Standing Rock Sioux Nation. She was born and raised in Chicago. She went to Harvard and went to Harvard Law School, but also Iowa Writer Workshop, and has now turned to writing full-time. She has 3 novels, The Grass Dancer, Roof Walker, and Sacred Wilderness. And apparently just finished a novel that's based on 3 generations of her own family that were in the the Indian boarding school system that we've talked about pretty much every week we've been together. So we're really fortunate to have her joining us next week. And I know it's only a week away, but if you had a chance to read one of her works, I might recommend Sacred Wilderness, because that's sort of covering some of the ground she's going to talk about next week. And with that, I think we will say good night and see you next week.